we come to a section on the enlightened ones. And even if we ourselves are still in training, not yet fully liberated, nonetheless we can make use of the teachings passed down through time. Use them to encourage ourselves to cultivate great aspirations. So now we have yet another wonderful passage. A monk who is an arahant, an arhat, one who is fully awakened, devoid of, and then there's the term here, mental fermentations, which is the asava collection, 3 different, what you might call toxins. Asava is not easily translated. It means the basic problems in our minds, the basic tendencies that cause bondage. The 3 are sensual desire, becoming, and ignorance. We all entertain and uphold the conduit to becoming. We want to become someone better. We want to survive, all of that. We want sensual pleasure. We want to survive. We want to become, to be. We want to exist. And we are ignorant. So this being, this person, has cut all of those toxins, has cleaned them out, purified them. And has therefore become free of suffering. Who has attained completion. Yes, amazing. Finished the task, or done what needed to be done. Laid down the burden. Yes. Attained the true goal. Destroyed the fetters of becoming, and is released through right knowledge. Incredible. Such a one directly knows earth as earth. And notice that this is just the same wording that was used in the previous section, someone who's not yet awakened. And we say, well, they both directly know earth as earth. All right, isn't that it? Well, not exactly. Directly knowing earth as earth, meaning from earth comes the direct knowledge, earth. He does not conceive things about earth. Does not conceive things in earth, does not conceive things coming out of earth, does not conceive earth as mine, does not delight in earth. Why is that? Because he has comprehended it. That's why. Well, naturally, if we're talking about arhats, everyone can become an arhat, and so even though, well, that isn't quite true. You can do such terrible things in your life that it's not possible. But every sort of person, let's put it that way, can become an arhat. Seems we're mostly women here, so might as well shift this. So the term here is bhikkhu, but you could say bhikkhuni. The question is, what would the English word be for that? I don't really know what it would be. So we'll just say bhikkhuni. A bhikkhuni who is a worthy one, devoid of mental fermentations, devoid of asavas, who has attained completion, finished the task, laid down the burden, attained the true goal, destroyed the fetters of becoming, and is released through right knowledge, directly knows earth as earth. Directly knowing earth as earth, she does not conceive things about earth. Now, the basic thing here is self. What is my relationship to earth? Of course, we talk about things, but the most important thing, according to the commentary here, is self. Not conceive some relationship between earth and myself. Does not conceive things, self, in earth. Meaning it's not that I am in the earth. Yes? Sometimes we say, okay, here's this great earth, and I am one part of it. Of course, it's okay if it's a metaphor. As Peace Pilgrim would say, we're each one cell in the great body of humanity. You could say it for the whole planet, of course, or one cell on this huge, single, living organism. But we can't take it too literally. It's just a teaching tool. It's a way of attempting to get us to practice, to see things in a new way. It does not conceive things coming out of earth. It's not just that there are all these particles and then you have them bump into each other in the right way and then boom, myself arises. Does not conceive earth as mine. Does not say this is mine, which we so often do, don't we? Thinking about buying that property over there. Well, it's true. We can buy that property, but that's just a social convention. That's just because our society says that. It's not really ours. Same way that this body isn't really ours. It does not delight in earth. Does not become attached to the earth element. Does not get stuck on it. Why is that? Because she has comprehended it. That's why. When we comprehend it, we no longer do those things. There's nothing more to do there. There's no reason to conceive this and that. We have comprehended it. We see that there's nothing there to add on, nothing worth adding on, there's nothing there to hold on to, there's nothing worth holding on to, nothing there to possess, there's nothing worth possessing. This is the case for all the rest, even through nirvana. Now, it's very important. I had this come up in the other group. It really feels like, and it makes sense. I understand why this is confusing, because I'm almost always telling people to stop thinking. And this seems to be saying stop thinking. Such a one doesn't conceive this and that. So that means that thinking is bad, right? You have to stop thinking. Well, it's true at times that you should stop thinking. That's true. There are certain aspects of this training that require us to not think. If you're thinking, then you can't realize it. It's true. The metaphor I often use is, if you want to cook lunch, you just have to go to the kitchen. You don't have much of a choice about it. You can try to stay in the Zendo and cook lunch, and it won't go well. You won't get much lunch, and everyone will be annoyed as you wander around looking for the food, the knives, the pans, the stove. If you want to make lunch, you have to go to the kitchen. It's just how it is. And you can argue with that. You can come up with explanations of why it isn't true. You can do a lot of mental gymnastics, and yet, at the end of the day, you'll go to the kitchen. It'll be a long day for everyone else if it's the end of the day. But eventually you'll figure it out. Aha! That's where you make lunch. In the kitchen. The same way, eventually we figure it out. The place you enter samadhi is in non-thinking. That's just how it is. And you can come up with lots of reasons that that's not true. It's okay to conceive of this and conceive of that, on and on. Think. It's going to be fine. I'll figure out a way to enter samadhi. And then at the end of the day, you're going to go to the place without thought. Because that's how you enter samadhi. That's true. It's not untrue. But it isn't the ultimate point. Whether you like it or not, it's still not the ultimate point. Even if you're one of these new Buddhist, quasi-Buddhist teachers in the West and really the United States. They're all pretty much American white men who have this idea that if you just stop thinking, that's enlightenment. It's a whole trend nowadays. There are a bunch of people who are claiming this. They're making a lot of money at it also. They're doing great, which makes sense. Of course they're doing great. It's so easy in that case. People are willing to stop thinking if that means that they get to be enlightened. That's a fine price to pay. Plus the $4,000 you have to pay for the course. But, online course. But, all we've done is taken some non-thought experience and started conceiving of it, calling it mine and delighting in it. Did you notice what I just described? It's a perfect explanation of what these people are doing. Don't think, you know what that is? That's enlightenment. Well, what's happening when you start saying, hey, you know what that is? Enlightenment. That's conceiving of it. Conceiving of something in it. Conceiving something coming out of it. Conceiving something in regard to it. And then good news. You had that experience. It's your experience. You're enlightened. Wow. That's fantastic. I'm willing to do that. And we love it. We delight in it. We want it more than anything else. We hold on to it. And we start bragging about it. Telling everyone, you know, I used to be bad like you, but if you were more like me, you'd be good. Because we've mistaken a certain experience for awakening. But awakening is freedom, liberation, the ability to cut off this constant delusional conceiving, self-centered possession, appropriation, and attachment. If you go through this, you'll see, here's an arhat. If you go down through, you see, arhats still see. See, the seen as the seen as the seen. You see, it says it right there. Other group was confused about this. I'm making it very clear for you. This arhat is still seeing things. She still sees, she still hears, she still feels, and look, she still cognizes. She still thinks. It's not that we're trying to get rid of that. It's that when we're thinking, we know this is thinking. We directly know thought as thought. We don't then add on conceptions about that thought without noticing, wait, that's just another thought. Here it is, another thought. And this thought, just like the thought before it, isn't worth adding on to, is not worth possessing, it's not worth attaching to. All the way to, yes, that's right, nirvana. Look at this arhat. She directly knows nirvana. As nirvana, from nirvana, she acquires, she finds, she experiences the knowledge, nirvana. But she has comprehended it. She has actually comprehended it. Unlike so many of us. And in actually comprehending it, she no longer has the tendency to conceive things about nirvana, to conceive of nirvana as mine, and to delight in nirvana. Just as we were talking about earlier today. Even with just the relatively, I know it wasn't minor, but relatively, compared to nirvana, relatively minor bliss that we were discussing earlier today, even with that, delighting in it makes it go away. Attaching to it, saying, this is mine. Much less nirvana, without delighting in it. She walks the path. This is attainable. This is doable. We're talking about a normal human being here. Yes, that's who we're talking about right now. Just some person. Not different from us. She's just some ordinary person. Just like the people you see walking down the street. You wouldn't even notice her. Just like us. This is doable. Real people like us. Do it. It's a problem. It's a trick for us. I know. It's hard for us. I know. Because you read a text like this, and you hear that it happened in, where did it happen? It happened in Ukata. Well, where's Ukata? It's some special place where you can get enlightened. Not like Lowell. You can't get enlightened in Lowell. You have to go to Ukata. That's the place where you can do it. And even if you go to Ukata, maybe you can't get enlightened because you could only get enlightened there 2,500 years ago. Something about Ukata changed in the past 2,500 years. But to be some special person, not like us, to do this. That's the impression we have. Some distant person. You know how all the stories are. Long time ago, place far, far away. Those are stories that never happened. We all know that. We've learned that from when we were 3 years old. If it starts with long time ago in a place far, far away, it didn't happen. And that's what this feels like. So I know it's hard. It's tricky. It's actually surprisingly helpful for a lot of people to go to these places. For example, sorry, but you could go to Bihar. I mean, Bihar is a mess. It's a disaster. They used up all their good karma 2,500 years ago. It's so tough there. Nothing works. The leadership is world famous for corruption. World famous. They're amazing. So, yes. I won't tell you now. You can look it up. It's amazing. The roads are not roads. Water is occasionally available, but generally isn't. It's rough. And it's nice to go to places like this. And it's, oh, so this is where it happened. Wow. In that case, Loa's looking better and better. Maybe this could happen in Lowell. Maybe someone could have a breakthrough in the United States of America. Who knows? Seems possible. But the thing to notice is that all of that remains mental projection. Ukata is just some word that people said was a place. There's nothing actually Ukata about Ukata. There's nothing Bihar about Bihar. People just said it's Bihar. That's all that happened. Some people got together and said, Bihar. That's all. People said Lowell. That's it. We call that Mount Norris over there. Why? No good reason. I'd love to find out the Abenaki name for that little mountain. Why do we call it Mount Norris? Mount Hadley. Why? Mount Belvedere. Why? What kind of names are those? Sound like they came from England or something. You go a little further and all the names sound French. Why? They're not really, that hill is really English and that hill is really French. We can't get lost in all that. Because when we do, then we turn this into some kind of a myth. And then we get mad at all these religions or people believe in myths. Say, hey, you all should be able to see through your myths. But we are participating in that delusion. And what is the basic myth? The basic myth is you have to be special to do this. You don't. This is what ordinary people do. This is doable. It's feasible. It's attainable. It's achievable. And I know that this is hard to hear, but it actually isn't even that hard. I know it's hard to hear that. Feels better maybe if it's hard. But it's not that hard. If you put your mind to it, you can do it. You can do it quickly. And I know we say, no, it's really hard. Well, I'd suggest to you, it's not as hard as, say, raising a kid. People do that all the time. You don't think, wow, to raise a kid you have to be really special. We all know ordinary people who raise kids. You say, yeah, but to do this retreat, you have to get up early. Yeah, well, try having a kid. Right? Yeah. Say, oh yeah? Well, to do this, you can't do what you want all the time. Yeah, try having a kid. Right? Yeah. Yeah, right. Okay, well, to do this, you just have to keep going even when you don't know how. But parents, they all know how to be parents. They all know exactly how to do that. No. It takes a long time. You have to give up everything. Yeah, try having a kid. I'm sorry, because I know it feels kind of better if it isn't attainable, and you have to be a special, magical person to do it. But it's not true. This is, if I had to use a word, it would not be magical. The word I would use for this is much less romantic than magical. Although what happens is magical, what you do is not. What you do, the path, the method, is, if anything, mechanical. I think the best word for this is mechanical. If you just do it, it happens. It's that simple. It's like going in there and making lunch. If you just put the vegetables into the pot with some water, turn on the heat, and wait, you got soup. You don't have to be magical. and special to do that. You just chop up the vegetables. You have to go to the kitchen. So go to the kitchen, and then you chop up the vegetables, put them in some water, heat them up. That's it. It's it. It's not impossible. It's not magical. You just do those things, and then it's happened. But too much of the time, we get confused about that. And I understand, it's a little confusing. Why? Well, let's say you're making soup. Let's look at this very carefully. What does it mean to make soup? Well, you take out your tools, cutting board, knife, etc. Vegetables. Chop them up. Notice you haven't made soup yet. Did you notice that? You do not have soup. You've just done a few things. You took some things, took some other things, did some things. That's all that you've done. You did not make soup. You then put those things into another thing with another thing, a pot with water. You don't put all the things in. Don't put the knives in and stuff. But put the vegetables into the water, in the pot, on the stove. Have you made soup yet? No. You do not have soup. Wait. And then notice that at some point, it's soup. And it feels kind of magical. I know. It wasn't soup. There was no soup. And then suddenly there is soup. It's strange, I know. But what's the magical thing that happened? Magical thing that happened is not that you're a special mythical being. The magical thing that happened was that there came a point when your mental projection, soup, burst into being. There was actually not a point when there was soup. There was just a bunch of stuff that happened. And then that stuff just keeps on happening off into the future. And yet our minds, our mental projections, can suddenly say soup. And it is. The conditions are right for that mental projection to, in a way that is bizarre, suddenly crystallized. Soup. That is magical. And so if we think that doing this path is like making soup in that particular way, then this path would seem to also have to be magical. Because what that's saying is, because most of us spend our lives making soup or making a table or making a financial report. In all of these cases, what we're doing is we take a bunch of actions and then suddenly, out of nowhere, magically, there is a soup, there is a financial report, there is a whatever it is that we make, car, app. Out of nowhere, that thing has burst forth because we made it up. But this path actually isn't like that. Because what we're doing here is not making something. We're not making something. That's what's happening. We cease that creative process. And so there's absolutely nothing magical that happens. We just do what has to be done, and gradually we stop making soup. Then there's just no soup. That's it. There's no financial report, or, to be a little bit more salient, there is no self. The sense of self, me, who has come out of this or that, who is dependent upon this or that, who owns this or that, who grasps onto this or that. That person isn't found. All of these things we grasp onto, we think, I grasp it. I am creating the grasping onto it. But actually, the grasping is making the me and the it. The grasping produced me. I didn't do the grasping. And we do things in a way that's surprisingly mechanical, and then that grasping ceases. And with the cessation of that grasping is the cessation of this sense, I and it. It's very important for us to see that the it, this it that I grasp, can be a thought. It can be a thought. It's okay if it's a thought. We don't grasp the thought, and then that sense, I grasp the thought, I thought, vanishes. A division falls away. But if we conclude, okay, I have to destroy thinking, I have to destroy feeling, then we actually put ourselves in a very dangerous position. And this is historically documentable. That when we get into that place, don't think, thinking is bad, it's very common for us to quickly descend into an amoral life. Ethics, morality, is a kind of mental projection. It's a kind of conceiving. It's essential for us to do that. It's healthy, it's good. The point is that while we're doing it, we know we're doing it. If we say, no, don't do it, then we've descended into some kind of nihilistic, well, I don't know what word to use other than chaos. No thinking, no mental projection, no conceptual attribution. That's bad. Without noticing that that right there is conceptual attribution. When we do that, then suddenly anything goes. Suddenly we have the sense that there are no consequences, that nothing matters. Or we can go the other way, get stuck on certain rules, certain regulations. That then just becomes fundamentalism, becomes a way of creating conflict. We must have ethics. We use ethics in order to increase our sense of being trustworthy. We become more and more trustworthy, and that way we're willing to let go. But all that time, we're aware of what's happening. We know this is what I'm doing. And so as we prepare to move in this direction of Arhatship, what do we do? What are these mechanical things that we do? Well, we cut through this constant conceiving. We cut through this constant mind-making. We cut through this constant grasping, delighting. And we do good things. Here, we do a lot of good things. We're doing a good job. We have a lot to be proud of. We live in an unusually harmonious community that's unusually dedicated to being of service, unusually willing to sacrifice in order to achieve that end, unusually caring for each other, unusually questioning and doubting of whether we're doing a good enough job, dealing with all kinds of issues that our society is struggling with, with surprising skill. To know all that, to say this is our goal, and we're moving forward pretty well, you can say, wait a second, but you're thinking all that's mental projection. Well, yeah, it is. It's true. But we know it is. We're aware of that. We remain the master of the situation. And for that reason, we're able to question it. We're not totally caught up in it. We're not enslaved by it. But we're making use of it. It's okay to feel good about that. It's okay to congratulate ourselves, to feel happy, to be nourished by our sense of confidence, of achievement. There's nothing wrong with that. Too much of the time when we enter these sorts of spiritual things, we think, to feel bad about everything all the time is spirituality. To always put myself down and consider what a failure I am, that's non-ego. There's nothing non-ego about that. Think of ourselves as failures and think of ourselves as successes that's equally egotistical. We don't need to do it that way. We can have a goal, we can strive, and if we achieve it, we can feel happy. We can be nourished by that happiness, fed by it, so that we're able to do more. But all the while, all the time that we're doing this, that we're working on this, we're always asking, how would we know if this is working? Because people ask this question of me. People might ask it of you. Is the training working? Is it working? I know a monk in Japan named Dokyo Zenji. We called him Kyosan. Kyosan was a very impressive monk. And he had been training there under the Roshi for 12 years. And some of his friends from college came to visit him there at the monastery. They spent a few days there, had a nice time, and then at the very end, they left and he saw them off to the bus station. At the bus station they said, you really haven't changed at all. You've been here for 12 years and you're still just the same as you were in college. And so he came back to the monastery and he told us all about it. He was so proud. He said, isn't it amazing? I've been training for 12 years and I haven't changed at all. Isn't that incredible? And then he went to the next person. You know what my friend said? They said, I've been here for 12 years, I haven't changed at all. I mean, that's what I thought, but I couldn't confirm it. But they said, I didn't even prompt them. Went to the next person. Someone else, another one of the monks, was on a television program and was asked by the reporter, oh, you've been training here for about 10 years. Has it made you into a better person? He said, oh, yes, certainly. And I understand why he said that. He's a kind monk. But the Roshi's top disciple, who's now a Roshi himself, happened to see that television program. And the next time he visited Sogenji, he runs a temple maybe 100, 200 kilometers away. Next time he came to visit, he said, I saw that television program where one of the senior monks here said that he's a better person because he's trained. That's so shameful. That's terrible. This is horrible. Now I used to tell people I trained here, but I don't even know if I can tell people I train here anymore. Because they're going to think that this is the sort of place that makes you into a better person. Oh no. All the while that we're striving to be a better person. And that's why this monk said, I'm not telling you his name because it's so shameful, but that's why he said, I'm becoming a better person. To help the people watching TV. I mean, he knew that only probably one Roshi is going to actually see this. He's not talking to the one Roshi, he's going to talk to the people. Yeah, I became a better person, you should meditate too. So he's being kind, but the Roshi is going to be ashamed. This is terrible. Why? Because all the while that we're striving to become a better person, we have to be aware Well, according to what? According to what worldview? If it's making you into a better person, it's because you're attached to a certain worldview. But wait, if you're unwilling to be attached to a certain worldview, then you're attached to being non-attached to worldviews. That doesn't work either. So of course, we become attached to certain worldviews. But the whole time we're attached to certain worldviews, we know this is attachment to a certain worldview. It's not complete, it's not final. It's not ultimately true. It's not something that we can legitimately call the criterion for good and bad in our lives. In this way, we begin to release the constant greed, the constant hatred, the constant delusion. And this is what the Arhat then demonstrates. This Arhat has fully comprehended each of these things. The Arhat has, as you see, ended greed. The word here is passion. Ended greed and is devoid of greed. Has ended aversion and is devoid of aversion. Has ended delusion and is devoid of delusion. Naturally, we deal with issues at deeper and deeper levels. As I've mentioned before, I started playing tennis in elementary school, and I started playing matches and tournaments in middle school. I did different sports, but tennis was my main sport. And I kept on playing, and I eventually was playing in college. And when I was in middle school, I won about half the time, and I lost about half the time. And when I was in college, I won about half the time, and I lost about half the time. And you can say, that's too bad. Sounds like you didn't get much better. You won and lost the same amount of the time. After all that hard work, you played for years, and your win-loss percentage was still the same? How sad. But that's not the right way to look at it. I got much better as the years went on. And if I had wanted to, of course, when I was in college, I could have had a win-loss record in which I never lost. If I wanted to. How? Simple. Play middle school students. Easy. Just play middle school students all the time. Hey, you want to play? Sure. Great. Beat them. Ha! I beat you. Okay. See you later. But I wanted to have a win-loss record of about 50%, 50-50. Why? Because that's how it's fun. It's actually even more fun if you can get people to play who are a lot better than you. That's why the middle school student would have said, sure, I'll play. I mean, you're much better than me. I'll learn. In the same way, as we go deeper and deeper in our practice, we deal with our issues at deeper and deeper levels. We deal with our greed at deeper and deeper levels. We deal with our hatred at deeper and deeper levels. We deal with our delusion at deeper and deeper levels. Of course we do. We think, I solved that problem. Well, you did solve that problem, but now you're going to solve it again at a deeper level. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing to be depressed about there. On the contrary, it's fun. Just like the tennis. It's fun to deal with it again, deeper. Why would we want that to end? We don't want it to end. And yet, even without wanting it to end, at some point we do come to the end of it. We have purified our minds. There is such a thing as an end, and that's what this section is about. Saying it's possible. This is possible. You can finish. Now, of course, there are ways of not finishing if you still don't want to. Out of great compassion, you can dedicate yourself to service of all beings. You can stop simply trying to attain enlightenment for yourself and attempt to be of service to all beings. And in that way, even though we're free from delusion, we still participate in delusion. Even though we're free of hatred, we still participate in hatred. Even though we're free of greed, we still participate in greed. We don't separate ourselves even from those. We don't cut even that off. We're not biased even in that way. But now it's not because we actually are greedy, it's because of great compassion. This is completely different. It's important for us to be inspired by this example. of this nun, this bhikkhuni, who was completely transcended greed, hatred, ignorance through total comprehension. To throw ourselves into that, of course, begins with ethics. And yet, all that while, we use those mental projections, those ethics, in order to transcend the fixations of our own minds, so that we can be of benefit to all living things. This is attainable. This is doable. Each of us, we normal people, we're the ones who can do this. Please make use of each moment.